Hamza Hussein, I've been wanting to ask you, man, is that Appa as your profile picture? No, I've been seeing it. I'm just like it's like pretty small on my phone. But I thought I saw the big arrow. Yeah, that was like my favorite show when I was a kid. Yeah, used to watch like the reruns every single time it was on. I didn't care what episode it was. Yeah, okay. Review from Friday. So we finished up the abortion discussion. We had gone over, I think the class before that, we went over like a few of the ahkam and the rulings related to birth control and stuff like that. Basically, just to summarize that, to practice any reversible contraceptives like condoms, birth control pills, etc., are through tanzih. They're allowed and they're very mildly disliked. As for irreversible contraceptives, sorry, like for example a vasectomy and the things of that nature, they are not allowed, and they would be in the hukm of musla and or sorry of what's it called? What's the word? Castration. Sorry, castration. So that's definitely not allowed. Okay. As for the actual akli dalail for okay, no, the abortion, this thing is we went over if there's a possible reason before 120 days to perform an abortion, it can be allowed in some very dire circumstances before 120 days again, and it will also not be considered murder because, of course, there's no soul in that body yet. However, all four madhahib are unanimous that the fetus cannot be aborted after 120 days, and if someone were to do that, that will be counted as murder because you're taking the human life away. Hmm, and then some more detail about that. As for the aqli dalal, as to why, like the rational proofs, outside, like the secular argument, I guess we could say, as to why abortion is not okay or morally correct, is that there's like one, two, three, four, like a 4 or 5 point summary of that discussion would be that if we could, or everyone would agree that taking of a human life is immoral and that it's not correct unless it's in a situation um, like capital punishment or something of that sort. So, but killing another human or like self-defense, those types of things, like just killing a innocent, defenseless human being is not correct. And so, once like we have both sides would agree on that, now the job would be to prove that a fetus is also considered a innocent, defenseless human being. Now, the pro-abortionist will argue that the fetus is not a human being. So then the response to that would be that um, if it's not a human being, then what is it? Is it of an entirely different species? Is it whatever else you want to call it? But then, or they might possibly say that it's a fetus. It's not considered a full-on human being. Well, the answer to that would be like saying that okay, this child isn't a human being because it's not a full-fledged mature adult. But that's not the proper definition of a human being because a toddler is still part of the class of human beings. So basically, a fetus is just part of that journey as well, which is a fetus or a zygote, a fertilized egg, all these different things are just a stage of human development. Or they might argue that it isn't living. Then the response to that would be that all beings are either living, dead, or inanimate. The fetus, of course, the baby is not inanimate because inanimate objects, they don't grow or develop and move on their own. Like, for example, like our phones or our laptops, they don't move and they don't grow and develop. Is it dead? Is the baby dead? Well, of course not, because if it was dead, there would be no need for the abortion. So, by process of elimination, the only thing that the fetus could be is that it is living. It doesn't. The next ishkal would be that it doesn't have personhood, as it is still developing and completely depends on its mother. So this draws a false line as to what personhood is, because personhood, we'll argue, is not dependent on anything. So this draws a false line. I think some of the previous examples that we gave was like if you say that a being or a fetus is only considered living or alive, once it has a heartbeat at X number of weeks, or once it is, it could experience pain. I've also heard that stuff before. That if you put all those different benchmarks as to at what point does the fetus in the womb be counted as a human, you'd be drawing a false line to other adults that are already alive and are living their lives. So if you say that a heartbeat is necessary, then you could argue that well, why? So are people who have pacemakers or need machines to keep their heart working, are they not considered human beings? People that are, or if they say that conscientiousness is required for someone to be considered a human being, then does that mean it's okay to kill a long-term coma patient? Okay, so then a false line is drawn that would extend to normal human beings, which we would all agree aren't acceptable to kill. Therefore, the logic would extend saying that you can't kill the fetus either. So the conclusion is that personhood is not gained but inherent. If personhood is not inherent, then why would any of our lives have value? Any questions regarding this discussion of abortion? You could play devil's advocate as well if you'd like. This is a pretty important discussion and very hotly contested in the West, or in America especially. No? Okay, great. We can get started with Surat Fajr. I'm not sure how much of Surat Fajr we'll get through today. It's like a page and some odd lines long, so however, I don't want to keep like I want to make sure we get our portions done for each session. So maybe I could just go like super in detail in the beginning and then kind of slow it down towards the end. That way, at least we get through more material, inshallah. So let's see how that goes. Okay, so Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. One sec. Okay. So now, Surah Al-Fajr. He says the surah that opens with an oath of the Divine One swearing by the dawn, Surah Fajr, and other natural occurrences and sacred designations as a means of categorical affirmation to humankind that God shall indeed hold all people accountable. So he basically just gave a summary of the Qasam and Jawab al-Qasam. So purposes of an oath. As the surah starts, we see the first four ayat begin with the Waw al-Qasam, and what exactly is the purpose of these oaths. I think we had discussed some of these before, but just as a refresher, the first shows the anger of Allah Ta'ala, that a person could, anytime a person, or in this case, if Allah Ta'ala is taking an oath, it shows his anger. The second could be it makes that thing, it makes the thing that is being sweared upon a witness. The third is it's an attention grabber. That's another one, attention grabber. This is the style and the method of speaking amongst the Arabs, that they would take an oath when they needed to just grab everyone's attention. The fourth is the importance of the thing that is being sworn upon. فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم إنه لقسم لو تعلمون عظيم, which Allah Ta'ala says, Surah Waqi'ah, I believe. And the fifth reason is it's a prelude to the rest of the surah. A prelude to the rest of the surah. Those last two, three, I don't think I mentioned before. That, of course, now Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَالْفَجْرِ وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ وَالشَّفْعِ وَالْوَتْرِ وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَسْرٍ. Talks about the dawn, the 10 nights, talks about all that is even and odd, and the fourth, and talks about the night as it passes. Allah Ta'ala wouldn't just like swear by these 4, 5, 6 random things if they had nothing to do with the contents of the rest of the surah, which talks about Fir'aun, Ad, Samud, then talks about how like the societal ill about how people don't take care of the orphans. Then it talks about وَجِيءَ يَوْمَئِذٍ كَلَّا إِذَا دُكِّتَ الْأَرْضُ دَكًّا دَكًّا وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ وَالْمَلَكُ صَفًّا صَفًّا وَجِيءَ يَوْمَئِذٍ بِجَهَنَّمَ. And talks about some occurrences on the Day of Judgment, which inshallah we could tie it back to tie all of this together, inshallah. So, beginning with the translation, wal-fajri, why is it majroor? Because the waw al-qasam makes the harf al-qasam, it will always make the next word into the state of majroor. So, like wallahi, billahi, tallahi. Okay, those are the three huruf al-qasam. Okay, so fajr, as we said before, this word has come up many times, that it means to rip something. So, the dawn is called Fajr because why? The light is ripping through the night. That's when the first light starts ripping through the night. It also symbolizes the beginning of a life. You know, of course, when the sun starts to rise, then what happens? You hear the birds chirping, all the animals start to wake up, and all sorts of different things. The ulama also say that this is the time that the slave is most aware and closest to Allah Ta'ala. Because, of course, when you're getting up for Salatul Fajr, then, there's no other reason that you're getting up except for to pray and obey Allah Ta'ala. Third is this alludes to life after death, as the day is after the night. Like in our Islamic calendar, we know that like the new day starts after Maghrib, right? And that's when the night. So basically, in terms of like the 24-hour cycle, I guess if you want to call it, it's first the night, which is after Maghrib, then it becomes the day, right? So this alludes to life after death, as the day is after the night. Similarly, the dua that we make before we sleep, Alhamdulillah alladhi ahyana ba'dama amatana. That it is Allah Ta'ala who is. It's not that He woke us up, ayqadhana ba'da nawmina. He didn't wake us up after we had slept. He granted us life again after we died. And this alludes to the coming of revelation, as well as the success of Islam, because it's the light of revelation, the light of deen, the light of sharia, which pierces the zulma of dalala and different darknesses of those things which are against tawheed. So it's referring to, it could possibly be alluding to the fact that the mission of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, essentially. Ayah number 2. وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ, sorry. And by the 10 nights. There's two main opinions. The first is, and this is, I believe, what the Jamhur are of, is that this is referring to the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. The first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. It could also be referring, the second main opinion is that it could also be referring to the last 10 nights of Ramadan. It's actually, let me read this to you. It's a very, very, very good tafsir that I think maybe if you guys could probably read it as well if you it's not too difficult is my point, that what he does, it's called at-tasheel li'ulum at-tanzil by Ibn Juzay al-Kalbi. That what he does is a very, very good, it's like a Safwa type of thing, but maybe like one level above, I guess, in terms of the information he gives. So one thing that he does here is that he kind of gives all the different opinions, or a lot of the more major and serious opinions regarding some of the tafsir of the ayat. So for example, al-Fajr, he says that Allah Ta'ala takes an oath by the Fajr time of the day, okay, which is happens every single. Okay, وقيل أراد صلاة الفجر. That what is meant here is the Salat al-Fajr. وقيل أراد النهار كلها. What is meant is that Fajr is in the meaning of not just that specific time of dawn where the sun comes up, but it's referring to the entire day. وقيل فجر يوم الجمعة. It's talking about the Fajr of the day of Jumu'ah. وقيل فجر يوم النحر. It said that this is the Fajr of the day of Nahr, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. وقيل فجر ذي الحجة. The Fajrs that are like the Salat al-Fajr, or the time of Fajr in the entire month. So ولا دليل على هذه التخصيصات. He says there's no proof of any of these, like the last 4 or 5 that I mentioned, for it to be referring to any of these. There's no reason for us to restrict it to those. وقيل أراد انفجار العيون من الحجارة وهذا بعيد والأول أشهر وأظهر. That is referring to the time of Fajr. وليال عشر هي عشر ذي الحجة عند الجمهور. Okay, so the main opinion is that this is referring to the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, according to most scholars. وقيل العشر الأول من المحرم. This is referring to the first 10 days of Muharram. وفيها عاشوراء, and in it is the day of Ashura. وقيل العشر الآخر من رمضان. This is referring to the last. It's said that this is referring to the last 10 nights of Ramadan. وقيل العشر الأول منها, the first 10 days of Ramadan. So he gives a whole bunch of opinions. Then he'll give you like that the scholars have mentioned. Then he gives you what's like the strongest opinion and like the reasons for that, or why these opinions aren't the strongest. And it's good to be aware of all these. وَلَيَالِ الْعَشْرِ, we just said that. Okay, what's Shafi'i? Actually, one thing that I wanted to read to you guys was وهي عشر ذي الحجة لأنه أفضل أيام السنة كما ثبت في صحيح البخاري. So وليال عشر, he says, Sheikh Sabuni says, is referring to the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah because they are the best days of the year, as reported in the hadith of Sahih Bukhari. ما من أيام العمل الصالح أحب إلى الله فيهن من هذه الأيام, يعني عشر ذي الحجة. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that like the best 10 days in which a person could do good actions which are beloved to Allah Ta'ala and make him the beloved of Allah Ta'ala is none other than these first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. قالوا ولا الجهاد في سبيل الله, and they replied by saying that not even jihad في سبيل الله. قال ولا الجهاد في سبيل الله إلا رجل خرج بنفسه وماله ثم لم يرجع من ذلك بشيء. Then he says that not even jihad fi sabilillah, except for if a man was to go out in jihad and he goes out with his obviously he goes out with his life and he goes out with his wealth and his belongings and he doesn't come back with either of those, meaning that shahada is going to get him even more reward than any other actions during that day. So now, like I said, basically the two main opinions. The most famous is the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, and then the second is the last 10 days of Ramadan. Now, how does this kind of relate back to the first ayah, al-Fajr? Because the last 10 days of Ramadan is where the Quran is revealed, and the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah is where Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam addressed his entire nation, right? And he had addressed all of his people. So both are ways to earn Jannah, as mentioned in the end of the surah. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. But inshallah, maybe we can just talk about that more at the end. So the first ayah, Wal Fajr, talks about the dawn of prophethood, and the next ayah summarizes the entire seerah. Okay, the next ayah, okay, so let me just say this one more time. It could either be referring to Ramadan or the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Ramadan is where the Quran is revealed, and the Dhul Hijjah is when the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam spoke at Arafah, and he spoke to like the entire Muslim Ummah. Basically, the beginning of the seerah and the end of the seerah. So we see that revelation and the dawn of prophethood is mentioned in ayah number 1, then ayah number 2 summarizes the entire seerah. Okay, وَالشَّفْعِ وَالْوَتْرِ, and Allah Ta'ala takes an oath by the even, وَالشَّفْعِ, those things that are in pairs, and وَالْوَتْرِ, those things which are odd. روي عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن الشفع يوم النحر والوتر يوم عرفة, where it is said, narrated from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that the shafa' here is referring to the Yawm al-Nahr, the 10th day, and the witr, the al-watr, is referring to Yawm Arafah. ولذلك لأن يوم النحر عاشر فعدده شفع, and that's because the Yawm al-Nahr is the 10th day, and that's that the number 10 is an even number. وَيَوْمُ عَرَفَةَ تَاسِعٌ فَعَدَدُهُ وَتْرٌ, and the Yawm Arafah is the 9th day of the month of Dhul Hijjah, and its number is odd. روي عنه أن الشفع يوم عرفة ويوم الأضحى والوتر ليلة النحر. روي عنه أنه الصلوات منها شفع ووتر. وقيل الشفع التنفل بالصلاة مثنى مثنى، والوتر الركعة الواحدة المعروفة. وقيل, so again, some other opinions. Sorry. وقيل الشفع العالم والوتر Allah, لأنه واحد. It said that the shafa is referring to how Allah Ta'ala created this world: men, women, jinn, human, land and sea, sky and earth, sun, moon, all these different things are pairs. والوتر Allah, it is Allah Ta'ala who is قل هو الله أحد لأنه واحد. الشفع آدم وحواء والوتر الله تعالى. So these are وقيل, all these are like the weaker opinions. الشفع الصفا والمروة والوتر البيت الحرام. That the shafa, the even is referring to here is Safa al Marwa, the two mountains, and watar is Bayt al Haram. Al-Shafa Abwab al Jannah. The shafa is referring to the eight doors of Jannah. Wal watar Abwab al Nar, the seven is referring to the 7 doors of Jahannam. Waqil al-Shafa. Okay, so you see this a lot of opinions. وقرئ الوتر بفتح الواو وكسرها وهما لغتان. الوتر والشفع والوتر. It's also read والشفعي والوتر. Okay, like we say Salatul Witr. Okay, that's ayah number 3. As for ayah number 4, والليل إذا يسري. originally it was yasri, but the ya dropped off. That's why the ra has a kasra. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَسْرِ وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَسْرِ يَسْرِ, sorry. Um, so sara or saraya means for to take a stroll in the night. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَسْرِ. Let me. Okay, great. I thought the recording had stopped. I started freaking out. And the night as it passes. Ayah number 4, and the night as it passes. Now, why is the ya dropped off? I remember reading this. Where did I read this? Tafsir al-Nasafi, he mentions it. He says, what is the story? وسأل واحد الأخفش عن سكوت الياء فقال لا حتى تخدمني سنة فسأله بعد سنة فقال الليل لا يسري وإنما يسرى فيه. So Akhfash, he went to someone to ask him, went to like a scholar to ask him, why is the ya not present in this ayah? It's supposed to be yasri, as I had said, but how come did the ya dropped off? He says, I won't tell you until you can come back after a year, and I'll tell you the answer. This is just to test his seriousness as a talibul ilm. So then after he waited the year, he served him for a year, he was in his company for a year, he asked him again, فَقَالَ اللَّيْلِ لَا يَسْرِ. The night itself is not traveling, rather, it is traveled in it. The night is traveled in it. That's just something motivational, inshallah, for us to hear. Now, هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر? Is there in this an oath of sufficient proof? هل في ذلك قسم? Is there in this an oath of sufficient proof for whoever has, for those who have hijr, for those who have بمعنى عقول, for those who have intelligence? Is this not a sufficient proof for those who have intelligence? So now the jawab al-qasam is mahdhuf, that it came up before. What was the surah? I think this has come up before. That when Allah Ta'ala takes an oath on something, He's doing it to emphasize a point. Now that emphasized point is not mentioned here, it would usually just be mentioned after ayah number 4. But that's not mentioned here, and it's understood that the meaning is that لَيُعَذِّبَنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ الْكُفَّارِ. He says over here. وجاب القسم محذوف أي لتعذبن يا كفار مكة. Okay, then that the Jawab al-Qasam is that most surely this all-powerful Allah, the one who is the owner and who is able to create the Fajr, وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ وَالشَّفْعِ وَالْوَتْرِ وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَسْرَ, the one who has control over all of these things, which you don't even have a portion of control over. This Almighty Allah Ta'ala, why is He taking all these oaths? Because He's showing that you, O kuffar of the Quraysh of Mecca, all you who have been oppressing our Muslims and our beloved Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we will surely punish you if you do not stop doing what you're doing, if you do not make your tawbah and accept Islam. Now, why is that the Jawab al-Qasam? Like, how does that, we just pulled that out of thin air. How do we know that that's the Jawab al-Qasam? Because of what's going to come from ayah number 6 to 14, 13, something like that. Because now Allah Ta'ala is going to talk about Fir'aun, Ad, Samud, and how he destroyed them. So the reason that this is being brought up is because Allah Ta'ala is showing that you, Quraysh, you're not as powerful as them, and we destroyed them. So now if you don't start taking us seriously, and you don't stop bullying the Prophet that's been sent to you, then of course we could destroy you just like how we destroyed the ones who are stronger than you. Make sense? Okay. ألم ترى كيف فعل ربك آية number 5 هل في ذلك القسم الذي حجر. Why is, okay, so as we said, hijr is referring to the aql, it's referring to the mind. Why is aql called hijr? Hijr, as we know, it's also translated as no, like a rock, a boulder, right? Yeah. You guys know that? I didn't even know that hijr is used in Urdu. My fault. Okay, hijr is used as a rock or a huge, huge boulder. The reason this is because it's like the aql is like a rock in the path. It's like a huge boulder in the path. Sorry, because it refrains a person from doing what he says. It refrains a person from being in an idiot. It refrains a person from acting foolishly and doing stupid things. Okay. ألم ترى كيف فعل ربك بعاد. Have you not seen, oh, the alam tara, the tara, the ta, that is referring to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That's have you, oh, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, have you not seen? Okay. The mukhatab is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But the job of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is what? It's to recite the Quran and it's to preach the ayat of the Quran. So of course the audience, although the immediate audience as being referred to here by Allah Ta'ala is Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, by extension it's everyone, right? Additionally, we see that in the previous surah, Allah Ta'ala talks about the unseen. He talks about هَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ الْغَاشِيَةِ. Has the news of the Ghashiyah not reached you? Like this terrible news about how the Day of Judgment is going to come and just like literally destroy everything, and you better make sure you've been living your life correctly, or else Allah Ta'ala is going to take you to task. Has that news not reached you? Okay, so now those threats don't seem to be having the desired effect of Allah Ta'ala talks about the unseen in the previous surah. Now he's going to be talking about the seen, and the seen things which are going to be used as evidence. Yani, what do I mean by that? Because now the people of Ad and Thamud, their cities and their towns they're also in the Arabian Peninsula, in which the Arabs, they would pass by them when they're traveling and going on their business trips and whatnot, and they would see these like people of Thamud and they're in Ad with their ginormous houses and infrastructure and all these different things, and they'd see their destroyed, ruined towns, and they would be like who was able to defeat this army, right? So now my point is that the Arabs, they don't have the advantage of saying that, oh, like we didn't know that people can be punished like that, but but rather in their own history they're able to actually travel. They've heard about it so much, and they're able to travel and see the destroyed cities. So it's like they don't have any excuse to fall back on. Is my point. So okay, this ayah, أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِعَادٍ. This ayah is an encouragement to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba that although you're being oppressed, look at how we dealt with the oppressors of the Muslims back then. Ad, of course, these people, they were, who was sent to them? Hud alayhi salam was sent to them, and they, of course, they didn't believe him. So now, this ayah is also a warning against the Quraysh of Makkah, because like we said earlier, that these were the people that you're not like them in your physical abilities and your infrastructure abilities, as we're going to talk about in a little bit. That if these people were destroyed, then you guys, Allah Ta'ala is basically putting them in their place. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِعَادٍ إِرَمَ ذَاتِ الْعِمَادِ. So the Iram is either badal or atf bayan. You guys are forgetting what that is, inshallah, you can look at your tasheel nahu, but it's Iram is either badal or atf bayan of bi'adin. Okay, Iram is the name of the early Ad, like the forefathers of Ad. Okay, the forefather of Ad. I think there were some other opinions regarding this. Let me just check what he says. Okay, Al-Iram هي قبيلة عاد سميت باسم أحد أجدادها كما يقال هاشم لبني هاشم. Iram, it's said that it is a certain very specific tribe of Ad, and the reason it's been given that name is because of one of its earlier forefathers. Just like how we say the Banu Hashim from the specific Banu Hashim tribe from the tribe of Quraysh, and they've been called that because of Hashim, who's somewhere up further in the lineage. ورابه بدل من عاد أو عطف بيان وفائدته أن المراد عاد الأولى فإن عادا الثانية لا يسمون بهذا الاسم. وقيل إرم اسم مدينتهم. Iram, it's also said that this is one of the names of their towns. فهو على حذف مضاف تقديره بعاد عادي إرم. Okay, okay, yeah, that's fine. Irama That al-Imad. That means the possessor of it. So when you say That al-Imad, this is referring to from Iram, the nation of which possessed pillars. Iram That al-Imad, the nation of the pillars, which possessed pillars. So now this could be referring to two things. This is talking about their bodies, that physically they were like genetic freaks. They were like huge. They were yoked. They were just really, really, really well built as like soldiers and warriors. Or this is also referring to they themselves were people of, like I said, infrastructure that they could build, that they had these very, very tall columns in which they were able to build their houses and all these sorts of different things. التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد. Ayah number 8. إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد. The like of whom were never before created in the lands. The like of whom were never before created in the lands. So this is either referring to the people themselves or their like cities and their infrastructure. That Allah Ta'ala is saying that these people, no, in terms of their physical capabilities, no one was like them. In terms of or if you say that this is a sifa for the Dhat al-Imad, it's referring to that their cities, there was nothing like these cities. But what's the point of saying this? Allah Ta'ala still destroyed them. Like these guys were taught, like in terms of like their dunyawi accomplishments, in terms of their physicality, in terms of their ability, no one was like them, and we still absolutely desecrated and just decimated them. التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد. Why mention في البلاد is because bilad is for fortified cities, as opposed to maybe saying Misr or Medina. Uh, bilad is like a proper fortified city. So again, this is just reinforcing the idea of like these people of Ad and Thamud and all these different guys. These were people who were like the height of at that time, of course, they were the height of civilization, yet they still got absolutely destroyed and annihilated. Ayah number 9, وَثَمُودَ الَّذِينَ جَابُوا الصَّخْرَ بِالْوَادِ. And with the people of Thamud who carved their very homes out of the great stones of the valley. وَثَمُود, so now the people of Thamud, as you know, Salih alayhi salam was sent to them, and they're called the Ad Thaniya. They're the second Ad, meaning that they're like the descendants of Ad, and they were also very physically well built, as well as people who were involved with, as we see in this ayah, that they were able to carve out of stone. Jaba, yajubu doesn't mean to just like kind of like scrape off a rock or like being able to polish it and those things. Rather, it means that's naht. كانوا ينحتون من الجبال بيوتا آمنين, I believe is the ayah. That nahat is when you're just like putting the finishing touches on the stone. Rather, jabu means that they were able to like just split the stones, these gigantic boulders, in half. They were able to like drill holes in it. They were able to carve in it completely. Jabu sakhr is like the biggest boulders you can get. The biggest boulders, not just like a regular size boulder, whatever that means, but like the biggest of the biggest boulders. They were able to drill and carve in these sakhr. Jam'u sakhratun bilwad, in the valleys, the great stones, the great rocks of the valley. What is this valley referring to? I remember reading, what did it say? والوادي ما بين جبلين وإن لم يكن فيه ماء وقيل أرادوا وادي القرى. This is referring to the Wadi al-Qura, possibly, or it could just be referring to that they had Wadi. Of course, is where the water it's where the water kind of settles between two mountains. And of course, when you're in the desert and there's like a lake or like a pond or an oasis or something, if there's some sort of water source, then naturally people are going to gather around that. So this is also showing that these people of Thamud, not only were they were like physical freaks, not only did they have like a great civilization built, but additionally they had this prosperity in terms of like land and being able to farm and irrigate and drink from it, which was a rarity in the peninsula. وَفِرْعَوْنَ ذِي الْأَوْتَادِ. Now, so we've covered Ad, Thamud, now we're talking about Fir'aun. وَفِرْعَوْنَ ذِي الْأَوْتَادِ. And as well as Fir'aun, the one of the possessor of pegs, right? As we discussed in Surah Naba, وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا, and Fir'aun, the possessor of pegs. Yeah, go ahead, no problem, inshallah. So why is Fir'aun called Dhil Awtad? There's two opinions. Is because that Fir'aun, of course, we know that he had a massive, massive army, right? And now what happens when an army is traveling? That what's going to happen is that while they're going from one place to another and the nightfall comes, what do they have to do? They have to pitch their tents. And now the tents, of course, they're held down into the ground by the the pegs, meaning so that he's being referred to as Dhil Autad, referring to how he has a massive army under him, which uses a lot of tents, and by necessity, they also use a lot of pegs for those tents. The second reason that he can be called Dhil Autad is because of, I believe Abu Sa'ud is the one who mentions all this. He says, "Oh, لتعذيبه بالأوتاد." As we know, Fir'aun, what does he say? لأقطعن أيديكم وأرجلكم من خلاف ولأصلبنكم أجمعين. Right? What does he do? He chops off their hands, he chops off their legs, and then he crucifies them. And of course, if you're crucifying someone, you're going to need to nail their, like, put a nail through their actual forearm and use that nail slash peg and nail them onto the cross and nail their feet onto the cross as well. So that was one of his unique forms of torture, that he would use these pegs and just drive them into people's limbs so that they could be stuck onto these and be crucified. So Fir'aun dhil awtad. Now الذين, this is the jama', right? الذين, الذي and الذين. So الذين طغوا صفة لعاد وثمود وفرعون. This is a sifa for Ad, Thamud, and Fir'aun. This الذين طغوا في البلاد is referring to all three of these nations, that طغوا في البلاد, that they transgressed against their prophets and their sharia and all the different laws that Allah Ta'ala has sent to them in their respective lands. الذين طغوا في البلاد, and let's connect this to the next ayah, فأكثروا فيها الفساد. فأكثروا فيها الفساد. One point, okay, and due to their طغيان, so طغى, coming from the masdar of طغيان, they transgressed in the land, and due to that, فأكثروا فيها الفساد, therefore, thus they spread therein much corruption. فأكثروا فيها الفساد. Their fasad became kathra, it became much. So now what this is showing, as we've seen in other places of the Quran, Allah Ta'ala says, where is it at? I number. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس, correct? That the fasad and corruption appears on the earth and in the seas, basically all around in the entire world, due to what the people are doing. That we may think that perhaps that, our personal sins are just that, they're just personal. But Allah Ta'ala shows us in ayahs like this that our weak spirituality, our weak moral character, all our weak everything, it eventually has a great effect on the entire populace and an entire nation. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Then ayah number 14, ayah number 13, فَصَبَّ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبُّكَ سَوْطَ عَذَابٍ. 13. So your Lord poured upon them all, فَصَبَّ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبُّكَ سَوْطَ عَذَابٍ, a scourge of horrendous torment. A scourge of horrendous torment, he says. Shaykh Zaki Hamad again, from the gracious Quran translation. So your Lord poured upon them all a scourge of horrendous torment. So notice we see that the word sabba is used. It means to completely make someone drown in something, really, that you're completely drowning them. So Allah Ta'ala is showing that the swiftness of his azab, as well as, what does he say here? استعمل لفظ الصب لاقتضائه السرعة في النزول على المضروب، كما قال القائل صببنا عليها ظالمين سياطنا. والمراد أنه تعالى أنزل على كل طائفة نوعا من العذاب، فأهلكت عاد بالريح وثمود بالصيحة وفرعون وجنوده بالغرق، كما قال تعالى فكلا أخذنا بذنبه فمنهم من أرسلنا عليه حاصبا ومنهم من أخذته الصيحة ومنهم من خسفنا به الأرض ومنهم من أغرقنا. That he says that this is showing the swiftness, the different types of punishment that Allah Ta'ala sends upon the disbelievers. And the word sab is being used for the quickness of the type of punishment which is being sent upon them. So now they were all three of these nations, Ad, Thamud, and Fir'aun, they all received a different type of punishment, as Allah Ta'ala says in this ayah of Surat al-Ankabut, where there were some of them who were destroyed by or he says, فَأُهْلِكَتْ عَادٌ بِالرِّيحِ. Ad, they were destroyed by the intense winds that continued for how many days? 7 or 8? I'm, misremembering. 7 or 8. 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 7 or وأما عاد فأهلكوا بريح صر عاتية سخرها عليهم 7 ليال و8 أيام حسوما فترى القوم فيها صرعى كأنهم أعجاز نخل خاوية. So Allah Ta'ala says in the beginning of Surah Haqqa, number 6 and 7, that this ridiculously strong wind, which even a moment worth of this wind would just annihilate them completely, Allah Ta'ala sent this wind upon them for 7 nights and 8 days. SubhanAllah. Okay, فأهلكت عاد بالريح وثمود بالصيحة, and Thamud, the people of Salih, the nation of Salih alayhi salam, they were destroyed due to a loud shriek and a loud scream. وفرعون وجنوده بالغرق, and Fir'aun and his army, they were destroyed, of course, by drowning in the water. Interestingly, we also see the linguistic mastery, where we see that Allah Ta'ala wrote فَصَبَّ. Sabba means, like we said, to drown, referring to how Fir'aun, a'anahullah, was punished. Okay, صوت عذاب, نوع عذاب, all the different types. Okay, Inna rabbaka labil mirsad. So Allah Ta'ala discussed who was punished, which was Ad, Thamud, and Fir'aun, and then he discusses why they were punished. الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد. It's because of their tughyan and going against their prophet and the Sharia. Now, all of this again is being mentioned. Why? Against the Quraysh, correct? That this is a tasliyah for Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Sahaba, because they're being tortured and oppressed, but they're getting the good news that Allah Ta'ala takes care of the oppressors. Yani. And the second thing is that the Quraysh, who are nowhere near any of these three groups, they're nowhere like Ad, Thamud, and Fir'aun, and they were all the three of those nations were punished. Similarly, Allah Ta'ala, Inna rabbaka labil mirsad, indeed your Lord is most surely ever watchful. That their Lord is watching their actions as well, and He's going to punish them for their actions as well. Over here He says, أي إن ربك يا محمد لا يرقب عمل الناس ويحصيه عليهم ويجازيهم به. قال في التسهيل المرصاد المكان الذي يرتقب فيه رصد، والمراد أنه تعالى رقيب على كل إنسان وأنه لا يفوته أحد من الجبابرة والكفار، وفي ذلك تهديد لكفار قريش. So he says that the mirsad is like a place where an animal could crouches down and it targets the prey, for example. So of course, that's not being used literally for Allah Ta'ala, but basically what it's saying is that Allah Ta'ala is fully aware of what's going on with every single human being. He knows exactly what amal every single person is doing. And of course, this oppression of the disbelievers, it's not like it's going without being recorded. Allah Ta'ala is of course aware of this. Okay, Inna rabbaka bil mirsad. فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن. Okay, actually one more point about ayah number 14. You guys did Tajweed for beginners and you guys did the Safar series, right? The Qaida and Tajweed book, or just Tajweed book maybe. In the rule of Ra Sakina, we learned that if it is preceded by a kasra, it's going to be light. It's going to be empty mouth. It's going to be pronounced with tarqiq. If it's preceded by a fatha or dhamma, it's going to have tafkhim. It's going to be full mouth, heavy mouth, heavy. But over here, this is one of the special situations where actually, although it's supposed to be light, mirsad, it's actually going to be read full mouth. Mirsad. Mirsad. It's not going to be mirsad. And this is due to the sad after, which is full mouth, so it's too difficult to read like a light letter, heavy letter, so both the letters are considered heavy. That's just but of course that's how it's been transmitted from our Qurra and ulama. That's the main reason. Ayah number 15 and 16. فَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانُ إِذَا مَا ابْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَمَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَنِ. Now, as for man, فَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانُ, referring to the kuffar, okay, this is, although it's left general, in Jalalain, he mentions that this is referring to the kuffar. إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ, when his Lord tests him, فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَمَهُ, and his Lord tests him how? By being generous to him and blessing him with all these different ni'mas. وَنَعَمَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَنِ. He'll say that my Lord has surely honored me. وَأَمَّا إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ, and as for the one who is tested by فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ, and his وَضَيَّقَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ, that his rizq and the money that he receives, his wealth, his food, and his lifestyle has been reduced to poverty. He doesn't have much. فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانَنِ. He'll say that my Lord has dishonored me. My Lord has disgraced me. Now, here, this is an absolutely amazing point that Sheikh Sabuni mentions. He says, فيقول غافلا عن الحكمة إن ربي أهانني بضيقه الرزق علي بتضييقه الرزق علي. فقال القرطبي وهذا صفة الكافر الذي لا يؤمن بالبعث وإنما الكرامة عنده والهوان بكثرة الحظ في الدنيا وقلته. That Qurtubi, he mentions that this statement reflects the heart of the kafir, the one who doesn't believe in resurrection and doesn't believe in paradise and hellfire. And he thinks that honor comes from having worldly possessions. وأما وأما المؤمن فالكرامة عنده أن يكرمه الله بطاعة وتوفيقه. That Allah Ta'ala, as for the believer, karama, nobility, is when Allah Ta'ala, the only way that a person can gain nobility is when he increases in his obedience to Allah Ta'ala. والمؤدي إلى حظ الآخرة. And he increases, he grants him the tawfiq to do good deeds for his hereafter. وإن وسع عليه في الدنيا حمده وشكره. And if by chance, he happens to be an amazing slave of Allah Ta'ala, and Allah Ta'ala decides to give him this world as well, that Allah Ta'ala decides to give this amazing slave a lot of money and a nice house and all these different things, then he is thankful to Allah Ta'ala for these blessings. وإنما أنكر تعالى على الإنسان قوله ربي أكرمن وقوله ربي أهان، لأنه إنما قال ذلك على وجه الفخر والكبر لا على وجه الشكر. وقال أهانني على وجه التشكي من الله وقلة الصبر، وكان واجب عليه أن يشكر على الخير ويصبر على الشر، ولهذا ردعه وزجره بقوله كلا. Okay, anyways, so now the really, really amazing point is that he's saying that the attitude of the kafir is that once he gets all these different blessings of the worldly life, and he says, فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمًا. I always understood this as just face value, that he says that, I'm being honored by my Lord right now. But what is the intent, as Sheikh Sabuni mentions? The intent is that, فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمًا. Why? Why is my Lord honoring me with these different gifts and this good life? Is because I deserve it. It's because I am actually the one deserving of all these different gifts. That's why my Lord has honored me. And I heard this example too. Sometimes when there's like a political leader, or there's like a cult leader, they say that or we see this with different religions too, that people think that because they've been like given a platform, they've been given power, they think that, oh, this is actually God helping me on my journey right now. They think that this is they think that, oh, I'm actually, and basically they're saying that whatever I'm doing is because there seems to be it seems to be growing, because there seems to be people following me, because I have this honor in dunya. They think that this is a sign that Allah Ta'ala is like backing them up right now. People think that their mission or whatever that they're doing is now divine. فيقول ربي أهانني. Same case, that people think that I don't deserve this, and it's actually Allah Ta'ala's fault that He's disgracing me. Like, why is He doing this? So that's ayah number 15 to 16. Another point is that we see that أما إذا ما بتلاه is actually used for both. That, and maybe we could end off with this, that Allah فأما الإنسان إذا ما بتلاه ربه فأكرمه. That when that individual is tested by their Lord with wealth. And then ayah number 16, when that individual is tested by their Lord with no wealth. So we see that both of these are tests from Allah Ta'ala. A person shouldn't get that confused. A person shouldn't think that only the second one, only being tested, or the only test is that of sabr. There's no such thing as a test of shukr. Our test here in the West is basically, in the entirety, is of shukr. We have to make sure we're being grateful to Allah Ta'ala. We have to make sure that, our condition is absolutely amazing compared to some other conditions in the rest of the world, right? We have a roof over our heads, we have our bills paid, we have, X, Y, Z things. And our test, of course, is that of shukr. We have to make sure that we are being thankful to Allah Ta'ala for all of these blessings. What's the famous hadith? الصائم الصابر كالطائم الشاكر. right? Am I quoting that correctly? Let me just double check. I don't want to misquote a Shakir. Yeah, الطاعم الشاكر كالصائم الصابر. Okay, I don't know why I just flipped those around. الطاعم الشاكر كالصائم الصابر. That the one who eats and is grateful is like the one who fasts and practices patience. So, with both of these, this is narrated in. He's in Mishkat over here. Rahu Tirmidhi. And I'm sure it mentioned many other different hadith works as well. That if a person who is eating is being grateful to Allah Ta'ala for this, for the gift of food and all these different things, he's going to also get reward just like how the person who's fasting is staying away from that food. Right? So that's our condition of the West. That's of being grateful to Allah Ta'ala for the blessings that He has given us. And like we said, إِذَا مَبَتَلَهُ, that we are also being tested with all these different ni'am as well. One last thing was, yeah, I mean, just the general idea of a person, like we usually have this attitude as well, that a person shouldn't think that honor and dishonor comes from worldly possessions. Okay, we have a few minutes left. I guess we could just do a little bit more translation. Okay. كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم. Rather, no, it is a test of faith. كلا, ayah number 17. كلا, refuting the ideas of 15 and 16. That no, that's not the case. بل لا تكرمون اليتيم. Rather, your problem is that you do not but you human beings, you do not give generously to the orphan. بَلَّا تُكْرِمُونَ الْيَتِيمِ. You do not honor the orphan. وَلَا تَحَاضُّونَ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. Nor are you encouraging others to على طعام المسكين أي على إطعام المسكين. That you're not encouraging, although you yourself are not, you're not honoring the orphan, you're not feeding the orphan, you're not even encouraging other people from doing it. If anything, you're going a step beyond that and you're actually discouraging people from feeding the orphans. وَتَأْكُلُونَ التُّرَاثَ أَكْلًا لَمًّا وَتُحِبُّونَ الْمَالَ حُبًّا جَمًّا. That, and you eat the sorry, you eat the التراث بمعنى الميراث, which is inheritance. You consume the inheritance of these people. أكل اللمة, أكل شديدة, I believe was the وتأكلون ميراث أكلا شديدا. That you just, the wealth that an orphan is supposed to get, that is in your care, that has been left in your care, you don't give it to him. You yourself just take it and use it for yourself. وتحبون المال حبا جما. And you have a ridiculous, crazy love. جما means كثيرة. That you have a very abundant love, a huge love for wealth. وتحبون المال حبا جما. Okay, why is this whole yatim thing being mentioned right after all of, I mean, how does it fit into the rest of the surah that we've gone through? Let's see. Well, this is just a question that's popping in my mind right now, actually. So that's why I'm trying to give it some thought. Maybe we could probably end off here, and then we can continue from this, just like the last, what is it, couple of ayahs of Surah Fajr, and then we can start with this question of what exactly does feeding a orphan have to do with the rest of the surah, inshallah. Any questions? No? All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.